Hello everyone and welcome to my video where I'll be reviewing the Star Wars Droids ATL Interceptor vehicle. Now I've been collecting Star Wars for around 25 years and I've amassed a pretty good collection throughout that time, and I thought it'd be nice just to run through some of the pieces from my collection. Now this is my first video, so I warn you, this will be very dodgy. There'll be wonky cameras, probably blurred images and poor quality sound. We are talking amateur hour here. So please bear with me, and together we'll get through this. But the main thing is what I'm reviewing rather than how good the camera work is. I'm sure you'll agree. So I looked at my collection. I thought for my first video I'll try and pick something that you don't see too often. So I chose the Star Wars Droids ATL Interceptor. It was a vehicle based on the 1980s Droids TV series, which, let's be honest, for anyone who's actually seen a couple of episodes, it's not the best cartoon in the world. It mostly involves C-3PO and R2-D2 falling over a lot. But hey, things were pretty basic back then. I actually bought this a few years back. I think it was back in 2003 I purchased this. Now, I actually bought this sealed. I think it came from a case because the seller at the time had a lot of them. And it's in immaculate condition. There wasn't a scratch on it, a mark on it. I've got a few graded vehicles, things like mini rigs, and I've got them graded at 85, and I can say that this is in better condition than those. So I think had this been graded, it probably would have scored about a 90. But alas, it was not graded. Not only that, I committed the cardinal sin when I actually opened it. Now this wouldn't be much of a review if I hadn't actually opened it, so at least we did that, so it was a good thing after all. Right, okay, let's crack this thing open. Actually, just before I do that, I'll just show you the top of the box and the bottom as well, so you've got, you can see everything. Okay, so still sealed on that side, and this is the side I opened it way back when. Now, I actually bought this off a bit of a notorious seller back in the day. I bought this off a guy in the UK who went by the internet name of Toy Tony. Now, anyone who has been sort of collecting for the last few years will know of the poor practices that particular dealer, I should say, was doing. Now, what he actually had back in the day, he managed to acquire a whole bunch of unused cardstock and bubbles. And what he was doing was basically buying second-hand figures, attaching them to the cards and gluing down the bubbles, selling them as vintage toys that had been sealed from day one. Now, obviously, a lot of collectors, had overpaid, frankly, for effectively second-hand figures, and obviously it damaged a lot of the collector community. So anyway, it's a shame because back before he did that, he did used to have some pretty primo stuff. Okay, so as well as the vehicle, we have inside a sticker sheet. This is still sealed in the bag. We have the very common sort of black and white illustrated instructions. I always liked this "We Really Do Care" section on all the Kenner toys. I think it's something that you just don't see too often these days. I think people did genuinely take a pride back in what they produced in days gone by. You also had a Planetary Map. Now I'll move the camera and get a proper look at this in just a second, so we'll put that down for the time being. In the actual cardboard, there was or there is, I should say, the front gun in a bag, and it's sellotaped down to the side there. So if you're wondering why on the box looks slightly different, let's get a good picture of it. It's the gun right there would have attached onto the front. Okay, so the toy itself, it's fairly Star Warsy, I suppose. I mean, this is obviously an original design. It wasn't featured in the films. It reminds me, if I'm honest, it reminds me a little bit of G.I. Joe, actually, in the sort of design. It's fairly basic. It's just a canopy at the front here, sit one figure in. What I will say is the quality of the plastics is pretty good. I mean, that canopy has got almost like a tinted blue to it. and it's a much nicer and clearer canopy than in any of the vintage Star Wars vehicles that I've got. You know, your Y-Wings, your X-Wings, that type of thing. And I think it shows, obviously, this was a later vehicle in the line, probably one of the last made in 1985. And it's a real shame, actually, that the line stops there, because obviously the tools they were developing, you know, the engineering tools and everything, the vehicles and models and everything, they were getting so much better. I mean, the vintage Star Wars figure line, you know, you compare the 70s stuff to the late 80s stuff, or mid 80s stuff, I should say, worlds of difference. Okay, so we have two little guns on the front here. I think you have to push those in slightly, if memory serves. Click that back, and this is the one sort of action feature it has. There's a small lever under here, and ready, and that's it. It's pretty basic, but hey, you know, it was the 80s. What more do you expect? Okay, I'm going to pause it right here, and we'll take a look at the planetary map. Okay, and here is the planetary map. I've pinned it down with a couple of paint cans, because again, as I mentioned, amateur hour here. But this gives you a good idea of what it looks like. This is obviously being the Death Star one. All the artwork on here is actually hand painted. It's not photographs. If I zoom in, you can actually focus. You can actually see there. So it's quite nice. It's definitely got a certain charm to it. There were three in the set. This is obviously being the Death Star one. There's also a Tatooine and Endor. I do actually have the Tatooine one. I got that in the skiff. And here you go. Here's some information about the Death Stars. And it would appear that Death Star 1 is approximately the size of a Class 4 moon. Because of course we all know what a Class 4 moon, how big that is. As does every child of the 80s. Also, I like here very simple instructions for a planetary map to Endor, just down there, and again Tatooine is just over there. The concept of space being three-dimensional clearly lost on Kenner at the time. And here is the back side of the poster, which is basically a sales sheet for the vehicles in the line. Now, obviously, you can see the vehicles that they've got here, the A-Wings, Titanium, that type of stuff, it's the later stuff, obviously, because this is the Power of the Force line. In fact, if I just show you these ones here, you can see the other two in the set, albeit sideways. So as I mentioned, I've actually got the skiff, where I got another planetary map. And this is a nice grouping of all the figures in the series. Although interestingly, as this is a Droids vehicle, there isn't actually any Droids figures on this sales sheet. Okay, and we're back. Now, one thing I did fail to mention actually when I was looking at this toy is it does also have a landing leg down here. I missed that initially. It's been quite a long time actually since I've unboxed this, because I have it in my Star Wars display room, but I have it actually inside the box, so it's rare that I actually pull them out like this. Now, it's quite a nice vehicle, as I said, and I might actually think about displaying it outside, you know, a little bit like this now. Okay, so the last thing I just wanted to touch on before I wrap this up was values. Now, I've watched obviously a lot of YouTube videos with reviewing Star Wars, and the one thing that seems to be missing is no one really talks about the values. Now, I know obviously it's quite difficult because as soon as you record something, the values can change, and obviously values as well, you know, they're subjective. At the end of the day, what you're comfortable paying for something is generally what the value is. That being said, you can have a guideline. I've looked at past sales on eBay and also just kind of keeping an eye on things over the months, over the years. And so, okay, so let's start. I paid £60 for this back in 2003, and as I said, I actually opened it. And again, it wasn't a big deal back in 2003. Grading wasn't really a huge thing. It was only really in its infancy. The AFA wore out. But especially in the UK, we didn't really have many graded figures. So anyway, I paid £60 and I opened it. In this condition, I think you would probably looking at around 200 to possibly 250 at the high end to get this in this condition, whether it's sealed or as my one is, opened but completely immaculate, mint, untouched. So, do you think that's worth it, or do you think my valuation is too high, too low? Let me know. As I said, prices are subjective, and of course prices are also very different depending on what country you're in. In the UK, we didn't get too many of these. I would be interested to know if there's any collectors out there, if you can actually remember from the UK these being on toy shelves. I certainly don't. That being said, I was a bit young at the time, so I probably wouldn't have noticed. But yeah, I would be interested to know that. Another thing I would be interested to know, actually, going back to the planetary maps, were they the same ones in each box, or were they just randomly inserted? As I said, I have the Death Star one. Is that the same one that comes in every ATL? Okay, well, thank you very much for watching. As I say, this is my first video, and if I don't just play it back inside it's so terrible I'll just delete it, then you would have actually seen it. I will be bringing more videos. I've got quite a few interesting pieces here and there in the collection. I think what I'll do next is a graded, carded vintage Star Wars figure from the actual Star Wars line rather than the Droids cartoon line. I think I might stick to the Power of the Force. So that's the 1985 Power of the Force, obviously not the 90s version. Okay, well thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care.